This is a photo of the most important and famous river in China, the Yellow River, aka the cradle of Chinese civilization, aka China's scourge, because of its frequent devastating floods. The photo is taken in Henan province near the city of Kaifeng. It might not be obvious from this image of people gathered in leisure along the edge of the banks, but the river is raised over 10 meters or 30 feet above the adjoining land and above the city itself. In Kaifeng, they call it the river suspended in the sky. This poses two big problems. One, if at any time the levees holding up the river are breached or break, the unstoppable downward flood would lead to devastating catastrophe. Two, the raised walls of the river separates itself from the rest of the surrounding ecosystem, cutting itself off from communities of living organisms in conjunction with non-living components of the environment. Essentially, it has become a raised aqueduct. The Yellow River is linked to the beginning of Chinese culture and civilization. The ancient flooding of the North China Plains allowed the soil to be fertile for an agrarian society. As populations grew, the need to control the flooding river grew as well. The rise and fall of dynasties was linked to the flooding and lack of management of the levees. Centralization of authority was linked to the need to control breaches in the Yellow River. The more organized the government was at building the levees, the more risk it created for future floods by raising the level of the river. Central government equals better levee management, equals higher levees, equals more risk of flood by raising the level of rivers, equals too much financial stress, equals weaker central government, equals less maintenance on levees, equals levee breach, equals devastating flood, equals demise of dynasty. Shenyang Airport. I see Liu from a distance. He's standing behind the barricade with a sign with my name written on it in English. He doesn't know I speak some Chinese. He's my translator and organizer for my trip to see the South to North Water Diversion Project. But his English is pretty bad, on par with my Chinese. In this forest of language, we meet for the next week and a half while following a man-made body of water awkwardly migrating north. He has two other men with him. I'm not sure what they're doing there. We go to have lunch at a restaurant on the Han River. Liu describes the aqueduct as a social performance project. Average citizens don't care about the water diversion project. No one knows it exists because it doesn't affect their lives. Mao Zedong once said, "The South has a lot of water. It's okay if we borrow a little." The government planned to build 3 aqueducts running south to north. The eastern route, the central route, and the western route. The central route, which is an 800-mile, 1,300-kilometer-long aqueduct, starts from the Han River, a southern tributary of the Yangtze River, goes past the Yellow River, and up to Beijing to remedy the chronic drought. 350,000 people were migrated in less than 5 years to make way for the construction. A water management official explains the redistribution of water in China, connecting the 4 waters of the Yangtze, the Huai, the Yellow, and the Hai. The 3 diversion canals will form a 4 horizontals and 3 verticals pattern, 四横三纵. The grid announces, among other things, modern art's will to silence, its hostility to literature, to narrative, to discourse. As such, the grid has done its job with striking efficiency. Indeed, as we have a more and more extended experience of the grid, we have discovered that one of the most modernist things about it is its capacity to serve as a paradigm or model for the anti-developmental, the anti-narrative, the anti-historical. Once lunch is done, we check into the hotel so that we can get ready to go to dinner with a few more men I don't know. There's one woman who's someone's mistress. Turns out one of the men is our driver. He comes to pick us up in the morning with his 2 daughters. The younger one has a stomach ache, and we stop so she can take a poop along the side of the road. We say they can come with us. It'll be an adventure. But instead, he drops them off with an old couple on a tractor in the countryside. The driver knows a Yiming migrant village nearby. The village was relocated 5 years ago when they expanded the reservoir, and the entire population had to leave their homes and resettle in a new place. We don't know why they expanded the reservoir. Was it in preparation for the water diversion project? Who knows? No one knows why anything is done. The Yiming village is a complex of multiple family modern houses on a half-dozen streets surrounded by fields. Only elderly men and women and a few children are sitting around under some trees. A grandmother with a young girl wants me to take her picture. She has 2 pigtails with bright pink flowers in her hair. I take some photos and show them. Liu tells them we're looking for something to eat and asks if we can go to their house. The grandma says yes, so we buy some snacks for the girl and head over. The grandmother lives alone with her granddaughter because all 3 of her children are working in bigger cities. The girl's father is somewhere else, but comes back occasionally to see them. The girl's mother committed suicide by taking poison when she was an infant. The grandmother sautés peanuts and egg with scallions and peppers. We drink homemade rice wine. The girl drinks a bowl too. Her cheeks turn pink, and everyone says she's drunk. These body fluids, this defilement, this shit are what life withstands, hardly and with difficulty on the part of death. There, I am at the border of my condition as a living being. My body extricates itself as being alive from that border. Such waste drops so that I might live until, from loss to loss, nothing remains in me and my entire body falls beyond the limit. Cadere, cadaver. If dung signifies the other side of the border, the place where I am not, and which permits me to be, the corpse, the most sickening of wastes, is a border that has encroached upon everything. It is no longer I who expel. I is expelled. The border has become an object. We continue towards Danjiangkou Reservoir. Danjiangkou is where the south to north water diversion project begins. We stop at a parking lot overlooking the beginning of the flow. They want 10 RMB for us to park and see the view. A pink stone at the edge of the parking lot is carved with south-north water diversion project central line. To the right side is the edge of the reservoir and the opening of the dike. Below, the waters flow toward Beijing very, very slowly. This is the beginning. Standing next to the stone, I unzip my pants and pull out my feminine urinary device and pee into an empty water bottle. In case you don't know, a feminine urinary device cups over the vagina so that women can urinate standing up. Liu pulls out my camera and films it. When I'm done, I cap the plastic water bottle, remove the fake dick, and zip my pants. We continue from Shanghua towards Denzhou, stopping along the way when we find the aqueduct. I try to pee each time we come to a site. I have a case where I store the bottles as I refill them. I mark the time and place for each sample. Lots of farmers are being relocated. When I ask if this or that village has been migrated because of the aqueduct, Liu becomes impatient when I don't understand. Liu says China is following the model of the US industrialization of farming to bring farmers together so they can eventually be turned into industrial farms. It took 70 years in the US. China is just starting. We come to the Tuan River in Denzhou. As we pull up to the bridge, Liu says he thinks he sees someone sitting on the outside of the barrier. They will commit suicide. He grabs his camera. The driver and I both disagree. It's just an architectural detail. As we get closer, we realize that there really is a woman sitting on the edge of the bridge. She's wearing pink plastic slippers, and her feet are pointed downwards. It gives her pose the ceremonial look of a figurehead on the bow of a ship. No one seems to notice her. Liu goes up and takes her photo. Finally, some women on mopeds stop and go up to the woman and try to talk her out of jumping. They tell her they will take her to get something to eat. Liu tells them to call the police. The rescue engine finally comes after an unbearably long time. They pull out ropes and belts in preparation for pulling her up. The leader yells at Liu to stop shooting. They wrap the belt around her waist and hoist her over the railing. She refuses to be taken anywhere, saying she has no home. The parallel between landscape and the mind, and between architecture and the mind, is mediated by the body, because on the one hand, the parallel has its origin in the external opposition between mind and body, and also because the body bears the stamp of other factors, just as the landscape does. The landscape shows the marks made by space and time. That is, to be more precise, the disposition of its parts, such as trees, rocks, and hills, show such efforts. This disposition of parts makes up bodily poses. They also show the stamp of inner states and expresses them. This analogy between scenic and bodily arrangements, these common forms of revealing mood, have served since the beginning of pictorial art as projection surfaces for expression. External configurations, whether they are in the landscape or in the picture, which thus turns into the landscape, serve as the expression of internal states. We spend the entire day driving around, looking for the place where the aqueduct passes perpendicularly underneath the Yellow River. The Yellow River is the life force of China. Without it, there would be nothing. People have lived off of it for well over 5,000 years. The water from the aqueduct comes from the Han River, a tributary of the Yangtze River, the other most important river in China. The south to north water diversion project allows the two rivers to meet and come in proximity. The power of both rivers align at this one point where no one knows how to get to and no one cares. It was not easy to find this interchange. It's not on the map. We drive along the highway, then through small villages and along dirt roads. We turn around and backtrack often until finally a security guard tells us to drive up a dirt road and turn left past a turkey farm. From the bridge, you can look down onto the water of the aqueduct as it leads up to the tunnel that passes under the Yellow River. The day is still hazy with rain, and it's hard to see the actual point where the water passes into the tunnel. An enigmatic space far into the perspectival distance. The shape resembles an ascending ladder into the sky. The surrounding landscape folding in on itself as if collapsing a map. Transcendent in its banality of concrete, pointing towards a singularity. Historic rivers converge in time and space. Spittle represents the height of sacrilege. The divinity of the mouth is daily sullied by it. Indeed, what value can we attach to reason, or for that matter to speech, and consequently to man's presumed dignity when we consider that, given the identical source of language and spittle, any philosophical discourse can legitimately be figured by the incongruous image of a sputtering orator? On the other side of time and space, a modest observation deck looks down a cliff onto a view of the Yellow River where you can imagine the waters of the potential Yangtze tunneling beneath. The view was unspectacular. It was slightly raining. A couple motorboats with orange life jackets zipped up and down the shore. We decided to take the fast train to Beijing. It runs parallel to the aqueduct until going underground as it nears the capital. The next day, Liu picks me up at 9 a.m., and we go to see the reservoir in the outskirts of Beijing. Each point we come to where there might be access is blocked off by security. Finally, Liu finds a bridge near the Summer Palace that passes over the aqueduct on the way to the reservoir. It is fenced off, and a security guard sits at the entrance of the bridge. Liu approaches him and tells him that his uncle from Shandong worked as a common laborer on the water project. He didn't get to see it completed and is now on his deathbed. Liu is working in Beijing and just wants to take a picture to show his uncle what he accomplished before he dies. With great ceremony, Liu recites, "With every tool, man is perfecting his own organs, whether motory or sensory, or is removing the limits to their functioning. Motor power places gigantic forces at his disposal, which, like his muscles, he can employ in any direction. Thanks to ships and aircraft, neither water nor air can hinder his movements. By means of the telescope, he can see into the far distance. With the help of the telephone, he can hear at distances which would be respected as unattainable, even in a fairy tale. Man has, as it were, become a kind of prosthetic god. When he puts on all his auxiliary organs, he is truly magnificent." Without moving from his spot, the guard points to the bridge and says, "Go ahead then." Tells him where to stand so that the security cameras won't get him.